Welcome into a special edition of Hand Raised Guys presented by Comer Heating and Air, Southern Air Conditioning and Heating. Today on the show, Chase Parham visits with former Ole Miss player and coach, current FAU assistant Todd Abernethy. Probably know Todd. Todd's a 2023 M Club Hall of Fame inductee. He's in Oxford for the event, which is the reason Chase is not here. Chase is emceeing the event again this year. He and Todd discuss his path to Ole Miss, his relationship with Andy Kennedy, how the Rebels shaped him, and much more. Then I'll answer some questions from rebelgrove.com here in the stream as well. I'll take your calls on the Campbell Clinic Hotline as well if you have any. We'll get to all those, so we'll have a little time. Got a lot of content coming your way. Just finished McCready and Siskey. That's up in podcast form now, so it should be popping up in Spotify and Apple here momentarily. Later this evening, I pushed everything back 15 minutes to give us a little bit of time in the event that anybody wants to call. But we've got the Butcher versus the dance instructor presented by LB's Meat Market. That's coming your way as well, followed by Pete's Pigskin Preview presented by Riverland Roofing, getting you ready for Texas A&M and Ole Miss. And then almost a 2-hour show this evening. If you're just hanging out, you want to put it up on YouTube while you're watching NFL or whatnot. You want to put it on a different screen on your computer. I talked to David Eckert of the Clarion Ledger, covers Ole Miss, does a great job. Also talked to Olin Buchanan, David Nuno of TexAgs.com. Both guys, friends of mine. They cover the Aggies. And then have our weekly visit with Ben Mintz of Barstool Sports. So all of that coming to you here on MPW Digital. So we've got your programming till past 9 o'clock. So I don't know where else you get that. 2 to 9. That's a lot of programming in one day. I also have a podcast up from earlier in the day with Jeffrey Wright in podcast form. The Josh Hendrickson Show, episode 9 of that is up in podcast form from late yesterday. And there's a new edition of Mind on My Money presented by Pinnacle. So a lot for you to listen to if you're making the drive to Oxford on tonight or Friday. Hopefully we can entertain you as you get here to Oxford. Get ready for Ole Miss and Texas A&M, 11 o'clock at Vaught Hemingway, the game on ESPN. This show brought to you by Comer Heating and Air, Southern Air Conditioning and Heating. Different names, same great products and services. If you live in Oxford, Tupelo, or the surrounding area, call Comer, 662-801-1777. If you live in Hernando, Memphis, or the surrounding area, call Southern, 662-429-4429. We got a taste of the cold weather this week. It's going to warm back up. It's going to be pretty pleasant next week, but you know it's coming, so you got warned. If you haven't checked your heating element to make sure it's ready to go, now's the time to do that. Get in touch with the people at Comer, Eric, and all those guys in Southern. Let them know that you need to get it checked out. If you have a problem, you want to know now. So again, Comer and Southern, the numbers are on the screen. Give them a call. We really appreciate them being a part of our show. Please make the Oxford Exxon and Blue Sky a part of your football weekend. We'll have this up in podcast form as an Oxford Exxon podcast on Friday. Stop by the Oxford Exxon on Highway 6 West in Oxford. You can fill up outside. You can grab some ribs inside. You can also check out their fantastic beer cooler. It's 34 degrees of sudsy goodness. I'm coming to you from the Clark Ford Studio, 662-257-1900 is the number. Call it. Ask for Corey Clark. Tell Corey what Ford product you're looking for. He'll send you a quote within 15 minutes in business hours. It's right to the bottom line. No hassle, no haggle. You get your quote. The rest is completely up to you. You can shop that quote around, or you can do what I've done, what I recommend that you do, and that's hop into a Clark Ford today. Again, 662-257-1900. Todd Abernethy, all other guests join on the Campbell Clinic Hotline. The Campbell Clinic's in Oxford now, 2608 South Lamar Boulevard. Suite 102, just across the street from the cottages at Hooper Hollow. The Campbell Clinic provides full-service orthopedic care, everything from sports medicine to foot and ankle surgery to spine and total joint care to pediatric orthopedics, physical therapy, and more. To book an appointment, go to campbellclinicoxford.com or call 901-759-3111. Walk-ins always welcome at the Campbell Clinic, Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. And all of our content this football season has been brought to you and is continued to be brought to you by Twisted Tea. Are you ready to elevate your college football game day experience? Check out Twisted Tea, your go-to game day beverage for college football fans. Twisted Tea is unlike any hard beverage you've had before. It's made with real brewed tea, packs a flavorful punch, 5% alcohol, and no carbonation, delivering the perfect balance of taste and refreshment that goes down smooth for every game day occasion. There's no need to settle for the usual. Twisted Tea turns up any occasion, especially when you're cheering for your favorite team. It perfectly complements your love for college football, your passion for creating unforgettable moments. So let's toast to unforgettable game day experiences with Twisted Tea, the drink that fuels fun and celebrates your love for college football. Keep it twisted. So I'll come back after this interview between Chase and Todd. I'll jump into the questions. I'll take some calls, and we'll go from there as we wrap up this week and get ready for a big football weekend here in Oxford. So here is Chase Parham and Todd Abernethy on the Campbell Clinic Hotline.
Todd Abernethy now joining us on the Campbell Clinic Hotline. Todd, good to talk to you. I know you got in from Boca this morning, got into Memphis. You'll be in Oxford later today for the M Club Hall of Fame induction. I'm just kind of curious, though. We're going to get to plenty of Ole Miss stuff. You said you stopped in for breakfast at Cracker Barrel. What's the order? What do we do at Cracker Barrel, Todd?
Man, biscuits.
Okay.
We don't go to Cracker Barrel down in South Florida, so this is a big treat for my kids. It's crazy how fast time flies, and my oldest is 13, and I have a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So this is honestly the 3-year-old's first trip to Mississippi and even to Memphis. So we had to get some Cracker Barrel, and we're well fed and really ready for a nap before we head over to Oxford.
How'd the little one do on the plane?
He did well. We woke up at 4 a.m. this morning, so he was tired by the time we got onto the airplane. So he slept a little bit and did not throw too much of a fit.
So Ole Miss, obviously, as a player, as a coach, it's meant so much to you in so many different ways with basketball. What's it mean to you to be inducted into this M Club Hall of Fame and to have this experience this weekend?
Man, it's such an honor. I'm super humbled and just so thankful for the opportunity to be inducted this year. And Ole Miss obviously means so much to me. I came. As you can tell by my accent, I'm not from the South. I'm from Indiana, and just had an unbelievable experience as a player. I obviously grew up, formative years of my life going to school at Ole Miss, and had a really good basketball experience, especially when Coach Kennedy came to town and kind of flipped the script on Ole Miss basketball and my experience there. And so to be able to come back, I was thinking about it's been 20 years since 2003 I came in as a freshman. And so it's right around 20 years since I was there as a freshman. So it's so fun to be back here with my kids, my wife, who I met at Ole Miss, and just be able to celebrate. And obviously it's not about me. There's so many people that had a huge hand in me getting to Ole Miss and then the success I had while I was there and beyond.
So who called you and told you were in? How'd you find out about this thing?
Jessica Lynch did. She called me a few times, and I get so many calls, just being busy. And in my world, I get so many calls. And so she left me a voicemail, and I don't think I listened to it. And so she texted and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about the M Club induction." And I'm like, I think I need to call her back. So she was the one to give me the good news.
I'm going to get into a good bit of Ole Miss stuff, but you mentioned obviously not being from the South. Your dad was started on the Indiana team. Bob Knight passing away. Just what's that been like since that news yesterday for your entire family?
Man, Coach Knight had a huge impact on our family. I probably wouldn't be where I am today. Wouldn't have ended up playing at Ole Miss if it wasn't for Coach Knight. My boss, Dusty May, actually was also a manager for Coach Knight, and was maybe one of the reasons why I ended up at Ole Miss. Dusty was on staff with Mike Davis, who took over when Bob Knight left. So Bob Knight has made a huge impact. He wrote me a letter when I first was at Ole Miss. He was at Texas Tech, just congratulating me for being in the SEC, and so he's made a huge impact. It's obviously really sad that he passed away. I spoke with my dad last night once the news came down, and my dad was able to visit with him a couple weeks ago. So he got closure, but Bob Knight is Indiana basketball, and I think he'll go down as one of the best to ever coach the game.
And a guy that I would assume has been a constant in your life from the very beginning, because your dad and being from up there and everything else. I would assume that, Bob Knight's probably one of the earliest people you even came to recognize or know a little bit.
Exactly. My dad has had season tickets for IU basketball games ever since I was born. And so growing up, we would go probably 30 to 45 minutes before tip off and go in and see Coach Knight, and he'd be in his coach's locker room on a chair, just watching golf, honestly, getting his mind off of everything. So yeah, he had a huge impact on us, and he'll be missed. And so it's sad, but also it's a great opportunity to celebrate everything he's done for the game of basketball.
So you mentioned that. Tell me how you got to Ole Miss. When did that start? How did that story play out?
Well, honestly, being from Indiana and being a son of a Hoosier, my dad won the national championship in 1976. So I grew up with IU, everything. And my dream was to go to IU and play there. And so it's funny how it worked out. IU actually offered me a walk-on spot. And so they did not offer a scholarship. They didn't need a point guard in my class. And so Mike Davis was the coach at the time. And so going into my senior year, I looked at the options I had, and there was a school out of Ohio called Wright State, which is a really good mid-major. And it was about 2 hours from us in Dayton, Ohio. Ed Schilling was the coach there at the time. He recruited me harder than anybody. And when IU decided not to take a point guard in that class, I kind of narrowed my focus. And I actually committed to go to Wright State and played my whole senior year thinking I was going to end up at Wright State. I didn't sign, though, in the early period. And sure enough, Ed Schilling got fired from Wright State. And so I took the commitment away, and then kind of the floodgates poured open. Memphis, with John Calipari, they jumped on me right away. I came on an official visit there, and was honestly a few hours away from committing to Memphis. I went on the visit, and in those days, parents couldn't go on official visits. So they only flew me out there. So I saw everything just by myself. So I got home from the visit, and I'm like, hey, Mom and Dad, this place was awesome. It's a top 25 program. Coach Cal is amazing. And my dad's like, hey, sounds like an awesome opportunity. I totally support you. Let's just sleep on it. Let's pray about it. And if you feel great about it tomorrow, you can call them and give them the good news and commit there. The next morning, Rod Barnes called and said, hey, we just lost our starting point guard. He transferred just out of nowhere. So we're looking for a guard to come in and have an opportunity to play right away. The guy that told Coach Barnes about me was Mike Davis, who was the head coach in Indiana. He was really close with Rod Barnes. And Dusty May, believe it or not, was on his staff as just an up and coming support guy. And so I had no idea what Ole Miss was like. Honestly, the only thing I knew about Ole Miss was Eli Manning in Ole Miss football. Yeah. And we talked about it. My dad said, hey, Rod Barnes seems like an awesome guy. They're in the SEC. There's an opportunity to play. What do you think? So I talked to Coach Barnes, ended up going on an official visit, and just fell in love with Ole Miss. And I went back and honestly, we took a couple. My parents said, hey, before you make a decision, let's drive to Memphis, and then let's go from Memphis to Ole Miss, just so you can feel what it's like. And see, hey, this is this is going to be 7-8 hours from home. And we made the trips, and, as we're going home, we, wrote down the positives and negatives, and it wasn't even close when it all came down to it. Ole Miss fit me so much better, and I had an awesome experience. I'm sitting here right now, and absolutely love Ole Miss. So,
was going to Memphis first almost kind of a Southern palate cleanser? Had you been in the South much at all in your life? I mean, what did you sort of even know about the culture?
yeah, I played in a national, like the AU Nationals in Memphis. So I'd been to Beale Street, gotten a taste of barbecue and blues, but I had the only place my family went to if we'd come to the South would be South Florida, being from Indiana. So I really had just tiny experiences in the South. So yep, as you said, Memphis was really the first taste of Southern hospitality.
You get there. I guess first was IU a singular focus? I mean, in high school, because you are a fan, is that the goal, or is it simply even at that point looking at all opportunities and kind of letting that play out?
I was open, you know what I mean? Because and my dad educated me like, hey, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, but just naturally being from the state, it was really IU or Purdue. And then Notre Dame was, I guess, the other biggest school in the state. IU and Notre Dame recruited me. Purdue didn't recruit me. And then Butler was the other one. And at the end of the day, it really came down to Butler, Memphis, and Ole Miss. Okay. So, but IU was really my dream all along. And there were people telling me like, you're in the rivals industry, so you're talking to these high school kids. And I had kind of the rivals guy of Indiana say, hey, IU is about to pull the trigger on you, and then it didn't happen. And it, opened up the door for me to come down here. And, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was really the best experience I could ever imagine. And I met my wife down here, had a great experience in basketball, and Andy Kennedy was really instrumental in me. He really changed the course of everything for me as far as my success as a player, and then getting my foot in the door as a coach. He was the first guy to hire me when I finished playing professionally, and gave me the opportunity to be on his staff his last 4 years at Ole Miss.
You got a little early success, SEC sixth man earlier in your career. What do you sort of remember about that transition into college basketball and your early time there?
You know what? I started every game as a freshman. And the funny thing is, looking back, Keith Carter was still playing in Italy when I first got to Oxford. So during the summer, we would work out, and he was usually rehabbing a knee surgery because he had some knee issues. So I remember, coming to school, and I got there early. So I graduated on a Friday from high school, and I did my a high school party, open house on Saturday. And then Sunday morning, I drove down to Oxford to start summer school. And that really laid the foundation for me. And that, I believe, was really the reason I was able to start every game as a freshman. Justin Reed was a senior my freshman year, and Aaron Harper. Those two guys were unbelievable players and really, really good teammates. So, the first 3 years, Coach Barnes had a huge impact on me. He is one of the best defensive coaches. So he got us tougher. He helped my defense a lot, being a slow white kid from Indiana. He taught me so much about defense. And then Andy Kennedy came in and really put it all together. What AK does so well is put guys in the right positions to be successful and to maximize their strengths. I was a really good facilitator. I think if I had I was a good shooter and scorer, but if I probably had a few years with AK, I would have been more aggressive. It was just so new to me, and how much freedom he gave us. And so the transition was great. We had a lot of talent, and we had a good foundation, and we were ready for him to just come in and put us in the right spots. And he made it all come together and work really well, winning the SEC West that year.
Right, exactly. What do you remember from that? I mean, there's a coaching change, obviously. Are you aware of Andy Kennedy at all until he walks in for the first day?
I don't know AK
first experience?
I might have seen him a little bit at Cincinnati just because of Coach Huggins, how he got pushed out, and then AK was thrust into the interim job. So AK came in though, and he told me right before the season started, he sat me down and said, "Hey, TA, I might want you to come off the bench, or I might want you to." It was really playing off the ball, and because I've been a point guard my whole life and was just used to making plays. And he said, "Hey, Justin Sarasoli is here, and he sat out last year. I think he might end up being the point guard, and you'll be off the ball." And I'm like, "Coach, whatever you need, I'm ready." And it didn't end up happening that way. I ended up being the point guard. But AK was super honest, transparent, and but then when things became clear that I was kind of the primary ball handler, he was really good at orchestrating everything and helping us be successful. The best memory I have though, from that senior year, I think of the LSU game. It was February 14th, and that was Valentine's Day. And the backstory to that is I got engaged on the 11th, which was Sunday, I believe. And so obviously, if you get engaged on Sunday and you have a game on Thursday, you better win the game. We look up at the score, and my memory is a little fuzzy, but we were down a few with probably 15 seconds left. And I'm thinking in the timeout, we cannot lose this game. AK is going to be so pissed. I'm going to be in big trouble if we lose it. He's not going to let this down. And so sure enough, Big Baby throws it to Brian Smith. We're trying to foul him. Big Baby Davis throws it to Brian Smith at half court. I end up getting the ball at top of the key and find our best shooter, Clarence Sanders, and he hit the game. I still have a picture in my garage of the scoreboard, whatever the score was, 70-69, I forget the score, or 71-70, in the student section just going nuts. So the Tad Pad, I'm really excited. Ole Miss is getting back in there this year. That was by far my favorite memory. And, at the time, that just helped solidify our standing in the SEC West. And we ended up a few games later, it was on senior day, we ended up beating Auburn to win and secure the SEC Western Championship.
Did you think, the entire time you mentioned the talent that was there, was it just a matter of getting everything clicking? When AK gets there, do you go, hey, we actually have a chance to do something significant with this roster in your final year?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Bam Doyne, who is going to be at the M Club ceremony tonight, he's been my best friend from day one. We came in together. He's from Little Rock. So Bam had an awesome year that year. Clarence Sanders is another guy that AK signed, or AK did not sign him, but Rod Barnes did. And Mike White, I think, was a point man. And so Dwayne Curtis was also another instrumental piece. He was already there. So we picked up a few guys. Kenny Williams, we picked up. He made a big impact. But I think we had the foundation. And, so AK came in and just put everybody in the right positions and let us grow our hair out. That was one of the big changes. One of our first questions to Coach Kennedy was, "Hey, do you care what we do with our hair?" He's like, "No, not at all." So everybody grew out their beard or whatever hair they could grow. So that's why I wore the headband that senior year, and everybody talks about it when they look at the old pictures.
I was about to say I might have to haze you a little bit tonight when they throw the big cutout up there, because you got a pretty good mop going back then, dude.
Man, I know. It looked a lot better on the court than off the court. And as I said, I got engaged in February. We got married in July. So my wife told me, hey, after the season, you're getting this haircut. And so sure enough, a few weeks after season ended, I got it cut.
What's it mean to you to have AK and Bam there tonight?
Man, it means a lot. Obviously, AK is doing his thing at UAB, and it's been really fun competing against him. Last year was the first year we beat him, and but honestly, AK being there means so much. I would not be here today if it wasn't without him. Obviously, he changed the culture of Ole Miss basketball my senior year, and that opened the door. I honestly was going into my senior year, I would have never imagined going on to be a professional player and then become a college basketball coach. So AK deserves all the credit for that. And when I got done, the crazy thing, when I got done playing, I spent 1 year at IUPUI. I was a volunteer assistant. So I was doing operations, video. And as I was there, I was like, man, I got to find a way to get back to Ole Miss. AK is still there. He's my guy. And I met with him that spring and just said, Coach, I think I can help you. I'm willing to do anything. There are other SEC schools that have support and extra support role. And, I really, if you're open to it, if it's possible, I would love to help you. And I think I could do it. He said, hey, I'm meeting with Ross Bjork tomorrow. So I'll bring it up to him. AK called me the next day, said, hey, I think this might work out. And then he created an entry-level spot for me. I ended up, when I got there were a few assistant spots open. And so coach put me in there within a week or two of getting to Oxford. I had no assistant coaching experience. And he threw me into the fire, and we ended up going to the NCAA tournament that year. That was 2014-15 with Moody, Jarvis Summers, Sebastian Saiz. Had a really special group. So having AK there with me is going to be really cool tonight. I obviously see him a lot. We stay in touch a ton. But then Bam Doyne is my best friend, and he we live together at Ole Miss, and he's a guy that is going to be my dude for life. And so having him with me, without those guys, I wouldn't have this honor. So I'm just really, really thankful for those two guys.
I can't repeat most of it, but Bam might be one of the top 5 quotes that he gave us even all these years later. Like he'd let some stuff fly back in the day. I mean, it'd be some good stuff. Yeah,
absolutely.
What would you have done had you not coached? What would be your professional career had you not got back into coaching?
I probably would have. My dad. I probably would have gotten in business with my dad, and my dad played at IU, played in the NBA, got into commercial real estate. And then in 1996 or 97, I was probably 10 years old or 12 years old. He built a basketball facility in Carmel, Indiana, which is my hometown. And as you know, basketball is king in Indiana. So there's a huge demand. So I probably would have ended up going back to Indiana and helped him with his business. And, or I would have done something in business in the South, would love to stay around Oxford. But ended up getting into coaching, and my wife, who I met at Ole Miss, Micah, she has been supportive. It's a really, really hard profession. And, going to the Final Four last year, going to the Final Four from FAU, just made it really, really cool. And I think it kind of helped my wife see, hey, all the sacrifices is having that experience was really, really cool. My son, though, my 7-year-old, after Houston, was like, "Hey, Daddy, where are we going to go next weekend?" Because we went from Columbus to New York City, then to Houston, and so
Okay.
I'm like, "Hey, Jack, this is it, man. We're going back home to Boca, and we're not going anywhere for a while."
You obviously believe in your team. You know, you guys are good. You were competitive as hell all season. What was that run like, though, during the course of those 3 weeks? I mean, are you just picking up momentum and rolling? I mean, you know, in the day-to-day, what does that feel like?
Man, it was crazy. We really didn't realize what was happening until we were removed, like after the fact. When we got back to town, we realized what we had done. We had a really good year. Obviously, we lost to Ole Miss early. I think it was the second game of the year. And that was kind of, you hit these roadblocks, and they're actually springboards when you think about it, because we learned so much from the Ole Miss game, and went from there to Florida, beat Florida, and then we won 20 games in a row, and we're just did really well in our conference and stuff like that. So basketball can go so many different ways. I mean, we squeaked by Memphis in the first round, beat them by 1 on a layup, and then FDU, Fairleigh Dickinson, ended up beating Purdue. So
Right.
our path to get into the Final Four was, looked a lot different once Purdue got knocked out. So it was really fun, but just going, when you're in it, you're just focused on the next day, the next opponent. But our players, like, they believed like 100% with all their hearts that we could win it all. And that was the mindset of everybody. And it was a really, really fun thing to be a part of. I grew up in Indiana. The Final Four came to Indianapolis in 97. So I was 12 years old, and went and watched Arizona play. So that was my probably earliest memory of a Final Four. And so to be able to do that as a coach, to take part in that was special.
Has it changed the program now? I mean, just as far as like how you're coaching, putting the entire thing around this year's team?
I mean, it is. And the funny thing, just to go back to Ole Miss, Ole Miss is an SEC college town. So everywhere you go, players are known by the fans. And so when we got back from the Final Four, we had a bunch of dinners every night around town. We had ceremonies. It gave the feeling of being in Oxford. Sure. And, just the buzz was amazing. And so going from there, our expectations are high, just because we have everybody back. We lost one senior that graduated, and then everybody that came back or everybody that was eligible to come back came back. We had no transfer. So the expectations are really, really high. And it's been an amazing thing for our school, just because we had never gotten the advertising. Nobody knew much about FAU. And so it's really put the school on the map. And we're going to the American Conference this year. We're going to be playing Memphis. I think we have 20 something games on ESPN. We're ranked top 10 at AP right now. And we're excited about it. We're playing a really hard schedule. And this is the time to do it, though, just because we have the players and we have the opportunities. So we're gonna take these opportunities, and hopefully we do well.
You were on that staff, obviously. You mentioned with AK, last couple of things. Really appreciate the time with AK and Mike and guys who've coached in the SEC as head coaches. Were you able to, in the moment, realize kind of everything you're picking up, or do you almost have to move on your career to go, hey, that was really instrumental from a coaching standpoint and learning in this process?
Definitely. I mean, I try to take notes as much as I can. But it's really funny. Guys do, like, everybody does things differently, and there's not one way that works. So that's
Sure.
the one thing I've understood and learned in me playing for Rod Barnes, then Andy Kennedy. And then I went and played in Europe for 6 years. And there were a few coaching changes at those spots. So I probably played for 8 to 10 coaches in, 8 years. And then being with AK, I picked up a ton from him, and I played for him. So I knew how he thought, and just kind of knew the way he wanted things done. And then being with Dusty has been an awesome experience as well. So I have taken things from both of those guys, and really every coach I've ever played for. My dad, I guess, last coach that I'll shout out is Big Tom. He honestly taught me more than you could ever imagine. So I've taken probably the biggest impact is my dad in the way he coached me, and probably he learned it from Bobby Knight, the GOAT.
How do you know when it's time to hang up in Europe and start coaching or whatever? What made that decision there at the end?
It was honestly my wife's health. She got sick. We had our daughters were really young. And we were in Latvia, in Ventspils, Latvia, my 5th year over there. My wife got a virus called the rotavirus, and it wiped her stomach out. And so we ended up going the next season to Poland, and she had to come home at Christmas with my daughters. I finished the season there. She was here, and she just couldn't do it physically. And so it was the easiest choice for me, my family or my basketball career. So I obviously chose the family, and I wanted to get into coaching. And I told my dad, I want to see what it's like working with a higher caliber player. Mm-hmm. And so that's what drew me to college coaching. And Mike White gave me the advice as well while I was overseas. He's like, hey, unless you're about ready to sign $1 million contract over there, you better get over here and get a foundation if you want to get into coaching, because it takes time. And so sure enough, I was in the SEC within a year after that, which is just crazy. That's not normal. But it was really the health of my wife that caused me to hang hoops up.
You got a weekend in Oxford. What are you looking forward to seeing? What's kind of the goal or the expectation for the weekend?
And we have no expectations. 2 of my kids were born in Oxford. So mm-hmm. My oldest, Ruthie, was born in Oxford, and then our oldest son, Jack, was also born in Oxford. So we honestly it's gonna be super laid back and low key. We're obviously gonna go tonight to the ceremony. I'm excited to see Coach Kennedy. Bam's gonna be there, and I've been told Coach Beard and the whole basketball staff's gonna be there. Yeah. So I can't wait to see those guys. I really want to watch a basketball practice. I'm still trying to figure out if they're going to be practicing tomorrow. It's not scouting at all. I have a ton.
You're just a junkie, Todd. I mean, like, dude, can't get enough.
I love basketball. Coach Beard is honestly one of the best coaches in the game. So yeah, I'd love to watch what they're doing and just get to know those guys. But I think Bottle Tree, the Square, probably Nukes or Obies if Obies is still there.
It is. Yeah.
But it's going to be a great time. And then obviously the football game on Saturday is going to be awesome. So we're super pumped.
Cool. Well, I appreciate the time. I know you've been traveling, got a lot of stuff going on. Get that nap, and we'll do it again in a little while.
Sounds good, Chase. Appreciate you.
That was Chase Parham. Todd Abernethy. That was recorded earlier today, late this morning. He's being inducted this evening as Chase emceeing that event. So I'm with you for a little while. I'll answer some mailbag questions if you want to call. I've got the Campbell Clinic Hotline up and ready. The number's right there, 662-426-1464. I asked for some questions. You guys delivered some questions, which is typically what happens. So I'll hop into some of those now. So let's see. Doug Goose says, why have people on this beat for years done the I have secret information that if I only I could tell you thing, especially with recruits and coaching drama? For the record, I know you guys don't, but why does this business do it? I'll answer this. So I think there's a lot of sites like this one that when this site was formed, and this site's one of those sites too. When this site was formed, it was primarily for recruiting. You could get team stuff, player stuff, other places, newspapers especially. And these sites covered recruiting, and the newspapers really didn't. The newspapers just kind of covered recruiting in a cursory way. And that's how that you grew sites. It's how, to be perfectly honest, it's how a lot of the people got connected to the coaches that they covered, because they were covering recruiting in a different era when there was before social media became what social media is today. And I think guys got used to that, and you could sell the drama, you could tease the drama, you could say, hey, I know something here, it's on the site, but you got to subscribe to get to the site, or it's going to be in a war room on Friday or Thursday or whatever the case may be. And that drama was a way that you maintained and you built sites. And I think there are sites now, I don't want to name names because I don't know, maybe we're doing it the wrong way. I think we have become, at Rebel Grove, we've become a news outlet. Yeah, we cover recruiting, but we're more honest about recruiting, I think, with ourselves than we were. Like, look, in an ideal world, we would still have recruiting coverage the way that we did 5, 6, 10 years ago. That just doesn't exist anymore. Kids get identified much earlier. They make decisions much earlier. There's not anywhere near as much drama. Guys don't talk to media because there's so many blogs and websites covering now. Instead of, the Ole Miss beat, for example, used to just be, 3 or 4 newspaper guys and a couple of beat guys. But now you have blogs. You have, I can think of 2 blogs that are basically never at Ole Miss events, meaning practices or whatnot, that they're calling kids. So the kids are getting called all the time. Multiply that. So if you have 10 people from that cover Ole Miss calling a kid, and the kid's looking at 20 schools early in the process, do the math on that. There's no way that you can accommodate all of those requests. And so the kids just stop talking to media. They have figured out that if they'll put enough stuff on Instagram, if they'll put enough stuff on Twitter, it will result in coverage. You see it all the time. I tell people all the time, we're making a mistake when we do it, but a kid tweets out a top 5, and that becomes a content item on a recruiting site. So he doesn't need the media. He doesn't need the media to put out his information anymore. He puts it out himself, and then the media just parrots it. So that's a lot of it. And I think you have sites where, and again, I'm not pointing at any individual site. You have sites where they have dedicated people to cover nothing but recruiting. And those people are now, at this point, having to sort of justify their existence a little bit. I have people ask me all the time, why don't you hire a full-time recruiting guy? And I'm like, okay, well, what would he do? What would he do? How would that go? Well, he'd cover recruiting. Okay, but how? He'd go to some camps, sure, might talk to some guys, but Ole Miss is a program that is very heavy to portal dependent. They don't handle as much recruiting. They keep things very close to the vest. That's not a criticism, it's just a statement, an observation. They keep things close to the vest, and you're not going to get a lot of information. And then recruiting changes. And so the kids who talk are the kids who are sophomores or juniors right now. I'm not saying those aren't valid stories, but let's be serious about those stories. When a kid gets an offer as a sophomore, you have no idea. You didn't before, but now you truly have no idea whatsoever what the portal is going to look like, what a roster is going to look like. what NIL is going to look like. The game has changed so much in this modern era. And when I say modern era, I mean 2021 forward. It is completely different today than it was then. And so now kids, they look at recruiting and they say, "Hey, I might sign with school X, but if it doesn't work, I'm going to fall back on school Y." So, but to answer your question, the question was, why do people do that? They like the drama. They miss the drama. They know that there's that hardcore section of the fan base that loves that drama, that feeds off of it, that misses it, that wishes it would come back. You see it every December. We'll start getting yelled at about where's the visit updates and that kind of thing. And we cover a program that doesn't really let that stuff out. And they're not as dependent on the portal. I mean, they're not as dependent on high school guys. A loss in recruiting just means you transition that spot to a portal spot. It's not like it was 5 years ago where you were dependent on high school recruiting. If you didn't win high school recruiting battles, you had no chance. It's no longer the case. And I just think there are people in our field who struggle with that. They don't like to admit that. They miss the drama. They want the drama. They think the drama sells, and I think they think the drama sort of justifies them doing the job the way that they do it. That's my opinion. I just think recruiting has completely changed. Tupelo Reb 99 says, on this morning's pod with Jeffrey, there was talk about contract extensions. While you've Saved by the Bell here, maybe. Hey, welcome in. Who's this? Hey, who's this?
Hey, Neal, this is Mark from Tupelo. I'll be very brief. Love what you and Chase do. Love listening to y'all every single day. You have been incredibly humble, in my opinion, not my forte, about making comments like, I don't know Lane Kiffin. I don't know him. I'm not friends with him, etc.
Yeah.
This may be the dumbest question you've ever had, but as somebody who knows nothing about sports media, I'm curious because I'm intrigued by him. I would love to know more of his insights. Is there any opportunity for you or Chase to reach out to someone with the Ole Miss athletics and try to get a 30-minute lunch with him? Tell him that you're not going to bring your pad or your recorder. Is that so dumb? Like, I would love to know his insights, and I think that would help you guys in formulating perhaps some background. But is that just something that doesn't happen? I'm going to hang up and listen. But I wish that y'all had that opportunity because I would love to know more about his psyche. So I'll hang up and thank you again for all that y'all do.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I mean, we could reach out and do that. It's not really something that gets done a lot. Look, I've covered people that I knew personally, obviously. It's been documented. I think it's obvious that Chase has some personal connections on the baseball staff, that those people are not just people that he covers, but that, I mean, I think it's no secret that he and Carl Lafferty, for example, are friends. Andy Kennedy was a friend, is still a friend. I've known other people that weren't friends, but I knew them on some degree of a personal level. I just don't think that's who Lane is. And coaches are pretty wary of stuff like that. They're not really going to let their guard down with media. When I say that about Lane, it's not a criticism of Lane or anything of the way he does things. People will ask questions about, what do you think he thinks about this? And the honest answer is, I don't know. I don't know him in any personal level. Now, he's been nothing but respectful to me. He's treated me with fairness, and he's been professional. And I'd like to think that I've returned the favor in all three of those regards. But I don't think Lane knows anything about me personally. I doubt he cares. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Just he's a really private person. I don't think he's super comfortable in those sort of settings. I've heard that from a lot of people. So I don't think that's something that he would want to do. And that would be me Chase putting him in an awkward position for really no purpose. I mean, I think I sort of understand his psyche as it pertains to that. I do know a couple of people who know him well, and ironically, one of those people was like, "Hey, you remind me a lot of him," and I laughed at that because I'm the same way he is. Like, I think the people that would sit down with him for 30 minutes and want to talk football, I think that's the last thing he would want. I think when he gets away from his work, I think he's away from work. I don't think he wants to talk about football. I get that. When I get away from work, I don't want to talk about work. So I understand that. I don't think he's super comfortable with his celebrity in town and things like that. I think that's one of the reasons he's pretty private. But no, I mean, there's just different guys are different ways, and that's the way he is. And I have people all the time going, "How come you don't get him on the podcast?" And it's a failure to understand that Lane is one of the handful of people that in his business that is so relevant from a social media standpoint, so relevant from a clicks standpoint that he can be on the Dan Patrick show, he can be on the Pat McAfee show, he can be on those shows really at the drop of a hat. If Ole Miss wins on Saturday against Texas A&M, you will see this next week. Ole Miss and Georgia will obviously, assuming a Georgia win, Ole Miss and Georgia will be just a huge national game next week, and you'll see Lane on all the national shows. And so if you can get the type of exposure that you can on those shows where you reach hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, there's no reason to do local media when you're already talking to local media twice a week. Hey, who do we have? Hey, you're on.
Hey, Neal, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Who's this?
This is Davis.
Hey, Davis.
Appreciate what all you and Chase do. Love y'all's work.
Thank you.
On the podcast a couple days ago, you were kind of doing a deep dive into just some old kind of baseball knowledge that you have. Have you played the Immaculate Grid?
I have not played it.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've watched some of the beat writers play it when we're like waiting for football interviews and stuff to start, but I have not done it.
Okay, well, there's a good one recently if you want to try to get a couple of the boxes I couldn't get. If we have a couple minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. 40-plus WAR career and 40-plus home run season.
Oh. 40-plus WAR career and a 40-plus home run season. Babe Ruth?
Yep.
Mickey Mantle?
Babe Ruth. I'm sure Mickey Mantle's one too.
Okay,
we'll do one more.
All right.
How about Hall of Fame and 2,000-plus hits in career?
Hall of Fame and 2,000-plus hits in a career. Probably a bunch of guys. George Brett.
Yeah, that one's kind of easy.
I loved George Brett when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I
think you would crush this one. So if you want to finish it off, it's the one from October 28th. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I've been doing it every morning, and it's kind of fun.
Okay.
I don't know as much as you do, though. I don't think.
Well, I grew up in a time when baseball was if it was probably the king. It was huge. Major League Baseball when you were a kid in North Louisiana in the 70s and 80s, Major League Baseball was just massive. It was so big, and I that's what I remember. I remember like looking forward to Monday Night Baseball in the summers because there were only 2 games on each week. There was the NBC game of the week, and there was Monday Night Baseball, and so you didn't really see anybody but the good teams, and the good teams were just superheroes in your eyes, and that and you collected the baseball cards and all that stuff. It was just a different era. I mean, I tell my son about it, and he just looks at me like I've got a cobra coming out of my forehead. I mean, he can't relate. It's totally different to the world that he's growing up in.
Yeah, I kind of wish I grew up in that time. I'm 29, and I'm sort of an anomaly, I would say. Because I played baseball in high school, big baseball fan. Actually, a big Rangers fan. So that was pretty awesome last night watching that
I bet
come to fruition. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I live in Memphis now, but I feel like none of my friends really watch baseball or care about baseball. You know, especially when you live in a town that doesn't have a team. But yeah, it's I feel like the rule changes that they've made have been great, but
I do too.
it'd be nice if they could get more people involved, especially young people.
Yeah, I'm hopeful, and I know this. People are going to assume that I mean this about the Cubs. I don't necessarily. I mean, I would love it if he ends up with the Cubs, but I'm hopeful that Ohtani, Soto, some of these, I think, really fun young players that are really charismatic. I'm hoping they end up in different time zones, Eastern, Central time zones, where more young people see them. When those guys are all playing out west night after night, young people don't see them, you know, and so if you don't see someone, you don't really identify, you don't get it. And then look, the NFL's done such a great job of marketing, and now you have, you know, all the NBA guys that are such first name basis for young people, and I'm talking about high school kids, junior high school kids. They know all the NBA guys. I mean, they know them like on a first name basis. They know their nicknames, and then, you know, now you have to compete with the English Premier League, and you have to compete with a lot. And I just think baseball's done a really bad job of marketing to young people and the sport. But I thought they did a really good job this year with speeding up the game. And you know, the postseason was kind of fun. I mean, Texas was a fun story, and Arizona was a fun story, and the Phillies were a fun story while they were going. And so maybe they gained some traction, but I'm going to guess that the Texas-Arizona ratings are not particularly good. So they're going to look back on that, and I'm sure they've got to hope that Ohtani ends up a Red Sox or something like that. They've got to get some of those guys in markets where young people see them before they go to bed at night.
Yeah, I agree. Well, yeah, I just wanted to see what you thought about the Immaculate Grid. It's kind of fun. So, but I know that people listening probably are tired of hearing about MLB a couple days before the A&M game. So I'll let you get back on it. But so far, what you've said about A&M is kind of scaring me a little bit, because I'm kind of, you know, more the optimistic fan and think we're going to win. And
I think you're going to win too.
They're
but
nasty,
they're nasty. They're good. They're really good on defense. They've got some really good players. Their receivers are scary. Anaya Smith in the return game is scary. They're a talented team.
Yeah,
they've got dudes, and I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. I think it's going to be a fun game. I think Ole Miss is going to win, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a nail biter.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it, Neal.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the call. Couple of questions in the thread. I'll get back to the others in a minute. What's my personal favorite Ole Miss football jersey combination? I really like their powder blue jersey. I like the powder blue with the white pant. If it were me, I would add a stripe to the pant or two stripes to the pant. Not crazy about just the white pant with the red Nike swoosh, but I don't hate it. I'm guessing from the hints that they're wearing the Realtree helmet this weekend, which I think is really cool. And I don't just say that because they're a sponsor. I think the helmet's badass. Other than that one, I'm not a big gray pant fan in general. I don't hate them, but they're not my favorite thing. I don't mind them when they wear them with the red top and the navy helmet. I'm not crazy about the different blues, the dark blue and the powder blue when they mix them in. But I think Ole Miss has cool uniforms. I think they have some of the best uniforms in the league. I like the all whites on the road. I think that looks really good with the powder helmet. I like that a lot. I think they have really good uniforms. I actually think this will be a really good uniform day. I know this is not a particularly popular take, but I think Texas A&M's road uniform is really sharp. The all white with the maroon helmet, I think it's a really good uniform. Really around the SEC, there's a lot of good uniforms. Like the Auburn game was a really good uniform. Auburn has good uniforms. I prefer Auburn's road uniform, but their home uniform is pretty sharp too. And we'll get the we'll get the Alabama LSU game this weekend, which is great uniforms. That's a great uniform game. God, that game looks good on TV when they play each other. Who's my favorite baseball player of all time? Let's see. I'll be quick. When I was little, I loved George Brett. Loved George Brett when he played for the Royals, early 80s. Before that, I liked Reggie Jackson. I liked Dave Winfield. I liked at one point I really liked Steve Garvey, and then he broke my heart in 1984, and I hated him after that. When he was a Dodger in the late 70s, the Dodgers-Yankees rivalry when I was a kid in the late 70s was just it was massive. You couldn't miss it. I loved it. And I would always cheer for the Dodgers for some reason. So I liked a lot of the Dodgers, Davey Lopes and Bill Russell and Rick Monday and all those guys. And then yet I kind of liked the Yankees too because I liked Bucky Dent and Willie Randolph and all those. It was just fun. Those are memories that I have of staying up, and I'd turn the TV all the way down in my room and keep it super quiet so I could watch the rest of the World Series game without getting in trouble. I'm sure my parents knew that I was actually watching, and they just let me, but I kept it really quiet, and I couldn't make any sounds, and that was fun. That was stuff that I remember. And I remember like the Orioles Pirates series in 1979. I was cheering for the Orioles, and the Pirates were really good with Dave Parker and Willie Stargell and Omar Morales and Tim Foley and Kent DeColvey. I don't know how I remember all those guys. The Orioles had a center fielder named Al Bumbry that I really liked. I would collect his baseball cards, and so I liked the Orioles. They had Ken Singleton and all those guys, and they lost in Game 7. I remember that. I remember watching that game. I was just really into baseball. It was the sport that I really loved, and probably and then probably in the early 80s, my favorite player became Ryan Sandberg, and he's probably over the course of my life, he's probably my favorite player. I wore number 23 whenever I could just because of Sandberg. I was 14 the year that he won the MVP, and that was, that's kind of when fandom is shaped, and I was a big Cubs fan to the point of, I've said this before, to the point where I really didn't have a lot of emotional capacity for much of anything else. So I was real into baseball, and I guess in many ways I still am. I love Major League Baseball. I sort of mark time with baseball in the summer. Let's see, back to the questions. Yeah, I probably need to stay out of the contract conversation. Has there ever been momentum towards another beat or another school that I almost accepted? No. Been a couple of things that I've talked to people about. My first year here, I almost took a job in a different place right away. Even before my family had left Mobile to join me here, I got a job offer that I almost took. I didn't think this was going to work, and I was kind of in panic mode and almost took that because it was going to be back to more traditional media, but I ultimately didn't do it. Hey, who do we have? Hey, you're on.
Hey, Neal, it's Austin.
Hey, Austin, what's up?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, man?
I'm good.
I'm glad you are. Well, hey, listen, I won't keep you long. I just, I love talking about baseball, but before I do, just wanted to say thanks again for all you and Chase do. Really appreciate how you guys cover my school. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
On that note, so you guys, and you might have to catch up my memory here. So was it this morning that you guys were talking about the Padres having to take a loan out to pay payroll?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I kind of have a twofold question with that. And again, this is just kind of speculation. So number one, have you ever heard of a franchise having to do that ever? And number two, do you think that this is all media, TV related with Bally Sports maybe going up? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I have heard of it happening before, where baseball had to bail out a team, and I'm trying to remember who it was. I want to say Oakland, but then as soon as I say that, I'm like, no, that's not right. But somebody They ran into problems, and baseball had to kind of bail them out. And yes, it's definitely TV rights related. There's just a change coming in the way, and baseball's dealing with it. I don't think baseball's going to get the next big, massive TV contract that they've always gotten. And these regional sports networks are going belly up. They're not doing as well as they thought they would do, and they can't maintain the contracts. And so, like, I think Major League Baseball might end up having the broadcast rights for like 14, 15 teams within the next year or two, which is an incredible number. And they've got to figure it out. They've got to figure out how you get eyeballs, and that's what we were kind of talking about is, and I'm not an expert on this. I need to become one, because this is going to become a really big story in our field with sports. It's not really with college sports, because college sports to this date are not having any trouble at all at getting the big TV contract. But baseball's a regional sport. I mean, like, for the most part now, they don't. There aren't many teams that resonate nationally. Most people who are Braves fans, and the Braves aren't a good example. Let me take them out. Most people who are Pirates fans live in or around Pittsburgh. Most people who are Milwaukee fans live in Wisconsin. Those are local teams that have a regional following. They don't really have national followings. They don't get big national numbers. So you've got to really maximize your regional and local market, and they're having a hard time doing that at the levels that are required to fund their payrolls and fund their stadiums and all of the things that are required for them to do it. And I mean, you see that happening in San Diego. It's not a massive media market. The Chargers left. There's no NBA team there. There's no NHL team there. It's just the Padres. It's a beautiful city. It's a beautiful park, but they couldn't meet payroll. They had a skyrocketing payroll. I mean, they had so many big names on that deal, and they're going to have to accept that they're small market, and they're going to have to pare a lot of payroll down, which is probably not what their fans want to hear, because they had a star-studded team with Machado and Soto and Xander Bogaerts and all those guys, but they didn't win, and it didn't work, and they're going to have to tear it down and get cheaper. Otherwise, they're not going to be they're living above their means.
And I know you're up against time, so I won't keep you for much longer. I did kind of want to ask this to go along with the point you're a Cubs fan and I'm a Braves fan. And I remember growing up as a kid watching Braves baseball with my grandfather on TBS or WTBS. And you probably remember watching the Cubs on WGN.
Yeah, I remember both of those things.
And
those were the two stations that was when it all changed, right? That was the first time that suddenly I could watch a team every day. I could watch the Braves basically every day. I could watch the Cubs basically every day. It was the first time. It's why those two fan bases boomed in the really early 80s.
Believe so, yeah, about the 90s, 80s, somewhere in there.
It was definitely 80s, because I could watch the Cubs every day starting in, I mean, I remember like as early as 81, and you saw all those Braves teams with like Dale Murphy and Claudell Washington and all those guys. I mean, those were household names because you could watch them every day.
I remember guys like Phil Necro and guys like that.
Sure.
And, remember hearing stories my grandpa would tell me about this. And I was just too young to ever really catch on to that era of baseball. And, by the time that I was really old enough to pay attention, those networks kind of stopped carrying the teams they'd always carried. So This has been kind of a weird thing. I really appreciate you answering that, because I was so taken aback by that. I had never heard about that happening before. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you for the call. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Have a good weekend.
You too. Yeah, Hayden says he's pretty sure it was the A's. I'm pretty sure it was the A's too, but for some reason I've got this nagging thought in my mind that that's not right, but it probably is if that's what you think as well. Let's see. Reb in Brooklyn says, let's say we do pull off 11-1. What would Kiffin and his staff pool salary bump to? I mean, they'd get raises, I would assume. He just got a massive raise. I don't know how many times you can go back to the well on that. He's worth it at this point. I mean, 11-1 would be just a monumental season. There's a question coming up, and I'm not ready to do 11-1. Let's see him get to let's see him win Saturday, and then we'll kind of move into next week. Next week would be just a monumental week, massive week, free shot. He says, it's my belief that this level of success pays for itself, and coaches like Saban ultimately are underpaid based on economic impact. Yeah, I agree with that. The only thing I will say is that I do think there comes a point, though, where you've kind of done all you can do. And I don't know how much further Ole Miss can go or should go or whatever, but like you're already seeing this a little bit at some places where, yeah, it's probably worth it, but at some point you're because of the way athletic departments are structured, if you continue to pay and pay and pay and pay in one sport, you have to sacrifice in a lot of others, which is a sacrifice most people are willing to make, and it makes sense to make, but just it has to start getting understood a little bit. Like, you can't invest in, say, soccer or track and field the way that maybe fans want you to, because all the money's going into another sport. Hey, who do we have?
Hey, this is Thomas. First-time caller.
Thanks,
Big
Thomas.
supporter of you work. So this game Saturday is, starting to make me a bit nervous.
Yeah.
I feel like lots of fans are picking this in as a W, talking about the matchup in Athens next week. Moving ahead for that. And, I noticed the line came down real fast from 5 to 3. It seems like all the sharp money's on A&M. It's well documented. They got the D-line, and they got dudes everywhere. So, I don't know. I just wanted – it feels like a weird spot Saturday, the 11 a.m. and all that. I don't know. I'm more the pessimistic type. I just wanted to hear your thoughts.
I think the number went down because when it started out at 5.5, that was a big number. I think it feels like if you watch these two teams, it feels like a 3-4 point game. So when it came in early at 5.5 and it fell immediately, it was because, the sharps, there was the early money went on A&M because they felt that number was too big. It has stabilized at 3.5, because I think that's probably right. Look, A&M's good. A&M has played if you look at the 3 games that they lost at Miami. It was a weird game. A lot of Ole Miss fans probably didn't see it because they were watching Tulane, Ole Miss at the exact same time, which is perfectly understandable. But I had, Chase went to New Orleans. I was here. I was watching Ole Miss on this TV, and I was watching Texas A&M on that one. And that was a weird game. A&M was in it. It was back and forth. And then A&M made some kind of dumb mistakes, and Miami played well, and Miami won the game. And we did that deal where, okay, well, they lost. They're done. Well, that really was a little premature. They had opportunities against Alabama, and they did not play a good second half against Alabama, and that doesn't work, as Ole Miss knows. You have to play a full game to beat the Tide, and they didn't. And then,
Right.
And then they lost in Knoxville. And, I mean, a lot of teams lose in Knoxville. It's hard to win in Knoxville, so
right.
Yeah, they're 5-3, and they've underachieved. I think they're more talented than that. But here's a couple things that I'll say that if you're an Ole Miss fan, I think these should encourage you, assuming that Ole Miss plays a good game. Look, Ole Miss has to play well to beat Texas A&M, period.
I agree.
But if Ole Miss plays well, Texas A&M has lost 8 straight true road games. 8 straight. That's not a blip. That's a trend. Texas A&M has not scored an offensive touchdown in the second half since September the 23rd against Auburn. In other words, they were shut out by Arkansas. They were shut out by Alabama. They were shut out by Tennessee. And they were shut out by South Carolina in the second half offensively. That's not a blip either. That's a trend. It tells me that Bobby Petrino is running Jimbo Fisher's offense. If you listen to the show or watch the show tonight that I've got ready to go with 2 of the Texags guys, in addition to David Eckert and Ben Mintz, you'll hear those guys talk about it. There was a lot of talk in the offseason. Turns out that talk was legitimate. Would Jimbo Fisher truly hand over the reins to Bobby Petrino? And I think it's pretty obvious based on their play calling that he has not done that. And at the end of the day, Jimbo's the boss. I mean, he's he tells people, here's what we're doing, in the same way that Lane Kiffin runs the Ole Miss program. I mean, Charlie Weiss doesn't get to go be a renegade. I mean, it's Kiffin's program, and it's Jimbo Fisher's program, and
Right.
and I think it's pretty obvious that they have some issues there. They're not great up front on offense. Everybody talks about Texas A&M's defensive line and their propensity to get to the quarterback, and it's legit. But they only have 3 more sacks than Ole Miss does. So Ole Miss is getting to the quarterback as well. And look, this game's in Oxford. I know everybody talks about it being a day game. It's fine. Vaught Hemingway is going to be very loud. The crowd's going to work in Ole Miss's favor. And Ole Miss has been very, very good at home under Lane Kiffin, especially starting in 2021. Mm-hmm. What have they lost twice? They lost Alabama in
21 and or something, or 19 and something like that.
Yeah, they lost Alabama.
Pretty good.
Yeah, they lost Alabama and Mississippi State at home last year. That was it. Before that, they went undefeated at home in 2021, if I recall. And they're undefeated at home this year. So home field's been an advantage for Ole Miss since Kiffin's been in Oxford. So I think all of those signs point toward Ole Miss. But yeah, I mean, look, here's the good news too. I know people get worried about what fans think and what happens on message boards and stuff. None of that stuff matters. I promise you, inside that building, they're focused on Texas A&M.
It's just, early in the season, I'm not going to keep you any much longer, but early in the season, it was, I was hearing about how A&M's defense was letting them down, how they just had guys everywhere, and I don't really know when it kind of flipped, but I mean, all I hear about now is their D-line and Walter Nolan and all those guys. But, yeah, you did make a good point. I mean, Ole Miss's defensive line is, you said 3 less sacks than them on the whole season. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. It just feels like a weird spot. Everyone's kind of everyone's talking about Georgia and the 11-1 thing. And, I mean, I've been an Ole Miss fan too long to even consider that. But, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
Neal.
Yeah, I get it. It is a weird spot. But here's why: because you're winning. When you're winning, the more you win, the stakes get higher. A loss would hurt more than like if you were going into this game 5-3 and you lost, you'd go, oh well, yeah, we saw it, blah blah blah. You do all that stuff, but you're 7-1, and a win sets up a free shot, and a win, even if you lose to Georgia, you're in the mix to get a Access Bowl, which is a big deal. You're in the mix to get 10 wins, regular season wins for the second time in 3 years, which is a really big deal. You would wake up on Sunday still, no matter what happens in Tuscaloosa with LSU and Alabama, you'd still be in the SEC West hunt, at least to a degree. I think if you win on Saturday, you got to cheer for LSU Saturday night. You need the Tigers to beat Alabama, because that's if your goal is to win the West and get to Atlanta, Alabama's got to get beat here pretty soon. But you'd be in all those conversations. You'd be on the periphery at least of the playoff conversation. It would make next week a lot of fun. On the flip side, a loss to Texas A&M and a lot of that stuff kind of goes away, and you'd still be in position to have a great season, but it'd be a little sobering. It'd hurt a little bit for a fan base if you lose on Saturday, and so that's part of what happens when you win. The more you win, the bigger the games get. The bigger the games get, the harder the more it sucks to lose them.
Well, I think the winning the SC West thing is I think that ship's kind of sailed, because we'd have to win out, and then if LSU beats Alabama, then it's like the SEC East thing, where they have to the tiebreaker deal, and Ole Miss, that doesn't favor them because they've got Vanderbilt. So I don't know. One more question. I've been thinking, so I kind of peep these bowl projections every now and then, and I was thinking if Ole Miss went 10-2, is there even a chance we get screwed and get Citrus Bowl, or is it? I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of looking at the landscape, trying to figure that out.
I really haven't. I mean, I guess it's possible. I haven't really looked at it closely enough yet, because it just feels a little premature. But,
right.
I mean, I think. I guess there's a chance, but I'd have a hard time believing that at 10-2, given that if in that scenario the other loss was at Georgia, who's number 2 in the CFP right now. It would be on the road. Your 2 losses would be Bama and Georgia, both on the road. Your ranking would be such that I think you'd be locked into the playoff.
I agree with you. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thanks for the call.
All right.
I'm not stalling here for a minute, but I'm literally moving some content back because I just looked at the clock and it's already 5:07 and I've got shows planned. So I'm just going to move everything back 30 minutes and buy us just a little bit of time so I can answer more of your questions. So I'm moving the Butcher versus the Dance Instructor presented by LB's Meat Market to 6. I'm moving Pete DeWeese's show, Pete's Pigskin Preview, presented by Riverland. I'm moving it to 6:45. Hang with me, caller, real quick. I need to do this. And then, let's see, 6:45. And then I'm going to move the OEP Extra to 7:45. Hey, caller, who do we have?
Hey, it's Andrew. So I didn't grow up an Ole Miss fan. I didn't become an Ole Miss fan until I went to college there in 2016. And I may be off here, but for me personally, I think I would rather not go to Atlanta. Long term speaking, if we go through these 2 weeks we beat Georgia, I would rather not go to Atlanta and have to play Georgia again because it's going to be tough to beat Georgia twice.
Well, I mean, sure, but you want to play for championships, right? I mean, you got an opportunity to play for the you have an opportunity to play for the championship. You want to play for the championship. That's my opinion. Because at 11-1, and look, this 11-1 thing is just so premature that I hate even doing it. But at but at 11-1, at not a conference champion, you're probably not getting in. You'd have to have a lot. You'd have to have a lot of help. As opposed to if you went to Atlanta and won, you would need no help. You'd be in. You would control your own destiny. I think anytime you can control your own destiny, that's what you want. You don't want to be dependent on somebody beating Oregon again, or the Big Ten making a decision about Michigan, or Ohio State beating Michigan, or somebody beating Florida State, or hey, really need Oklahoma to lose another game, or whatever the case may be. You don't want all that. Because if you can beat a team once, you can beat them twice. In that scenario, I mean, and then look, you guys as a fan base, you want to go to Atlanta. You want to play in that game. I've covered that game a bunch of times. It's a cool game. It's a neat event. You want to be a part of it. You want to get, and you also want that stigma off that you've never been. You're the one team or one of the 2 teams in the West that haven't been, or whatever. I mean, I think everybody in the West except Ole Miss and A&M have been. You want to go. You want to eliminate that. You want to play for a title.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm fairly new as a fan, and that stigma just. I would rather go to the college football playoff than go to Atlanta. But I see what you're saying about rather not wanting to need the help.
Yeah,
that reasoning makes sense.
If you win in Atlanta, you won't need any help. You'll be in.
For sure, that makes sense. Well,
and you want to put that banner in your stadium at some point. SEC champs. You want to put that banner in your stadium. You want to put that trophy in your foyer. You want recruits to see that trophy. You want recruits to see that banner. It's a game. You want to win. I mean, who was the coach that said we came to win the game? You play to win the game. You don't play to get help. You play to win the game.
That's fair.
So, I mean, I promise you this: if you asked all 85 kids in that building, they want to go to Atlanta.
Oh, for sure. I don't discredit that.
Yeah. So try to win the game.
Yep. Awesome. Well, that's all I had. I just wanted to ask about that stigma and what that looked like.
Okay. I appreciate the call.
Thanks, Neal.
Let's see. Yeah, Grind says fan day before SEC championship is a lot of fun. It is. It's cool. It's a lot of fun. It's a really cool event. That game's neat. That game feels like a big time game when you're in it. I've covered, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 of them. It's cool. It's really fun. The league does a great job with it. It feels like a really big event because it is a really big event. It's hard to get to that game. And so when you're in it and you have a chance to go to it, you want to. Hey, who do we have? Hey, you're on.
This is Rodney.
Hey, Rodney, what's up, man?
I'm thinking this week. I just don't know. I can't get a good hold on this game this week, Neal. This is a game I'm more worried about. I'm not worried about the Georgia game because we'll probably lose that game, but we need to get this win to get us just to stay on schedule, I believe. But if we can block, get a little bit of blocking, I just don't know if we can run the ball like we did a couple years ago. Who was that had a really good Ely? We need another good game like that from one of the running backs I think, to give us a chance.
Yeah,
don't you think that?
I just think you have to have a balanced offensive attack against these guys. You can't just depend on the running game. You got to be able to throw it. You've got to keep them off balance. You've got to have play action. I think Dart has to have a good game with his feet. I think Judkins has to have a big game.
The only team if I heard you right the other day, Tennessee's the only team that's ran on these bunch.
That might have been
Miami ran.
That might have been Jeffrey. I've got their numbers here somewhere, but it's actually in my bag across the way, so I don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
But look, Ole Miss can run the ball on Texas A&M. You got to be balanced. Here's the deal. Ole Miss has to play well. Period. Ole Miss has to play well.
Yeah.
That's when you play one of the better teams in the league, you have to play well. And frankly, in this league, there just aren't that many really bad teams. I know we make jokes about teams suck and this, that, and the other. They really don't suck. Auburn doesn't suck. You had to play well to beat them, and Ole Miss did. They put it together and played a really strong second half and got a win. Ole Miss had to play well to beat Arkansas. Ole Miss had to play well to beat Georgia Tech. It's just college football today. You have to play well to win. And if Ole Miss plays well, the crowd's going to be into it. A&M again. A&M's lost 8 straight road games. A&M hasn't scored an offensive touchdown in the second half since September the 23rd. A&M's good. Let's not make but A&M's not world beaters. A&M's not LSU. LSU's better than A&M. Alabama's better than A&M. You've played better teams. This is a very winnable game for Ole Miss.
The way Kiffin talked the other day gave me some confidence. So he must really feel good about this.
Yeah, I don't. We talked about this morning a little bit. I think Lane does this thing publicly, and it's just whatever. And I'm not convinced that it matters to his team. I don't think his team pays a lot of attention to it. I think this team's going to be focused. They're going to be ready to play. This is a mature, older team. Yeah, Lane was throwing a lot of shade at Jimbo Fisher. No question about it. They don't like each other. That's not a secret. But listen, inside that building over there, and that's all that really matters. Inside that building over there, they're very. This is a mature team, a very focused team, a very resilient team, a very mentally tough team. I don't think all that stuff just suddenly goes away. I really don't.
Now I don't know. As far as the Georgia game, I'm like you. It's like a free shot. I don't expect to win that game at all. I think Georgia's starting to really play well now.
Yeah,
I think they're going to whip Missouri pretty good.
They've won 25 straight games. They've won 41 of their last 40. Yeah, and they're playing really well. But look, they've won 41 of their last 42 games. including 2 national championships. I mean, yeah, is if you're counting on an Ole Miss win at Georgia, or frankly, if you're counting on a win for anybody against Georgia, I question your sanity. It doesn't mean that you can't win. It doesn't mean that they're invincible and that no one's ever going to beat them. I don't think that, but if you're asking me, hey, what do you think is the most likely outcome of Georgia at home against Missouri and Georgia at home against Ole Miss? Well, the most likely outcome is 2 Georgia wins, because the math points in that direction, in the same way that the math points in the direction of Ole Miss winning on Saturday, because that's where the trends are. When you've won 41 of 42 and you haven't lost at home since 2018, yeah, it's
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Ooh.
You know, so well, hey, Rodney,
I got in here late today. Yes.
No, go ahead.
Well, I got in here late today. I didn't see Chase. Is he not there today?
He's emceeing the Hall of Fame, Ole Miss Hall of Fame thing. Chase is a big deal, Rodney. You got to learn that. Chase is a star here, and Chase is a star in Oxford. Chase is a celebrity.
I got you. Neal, I'm going to talk to you about, if you don't care, you like the Oklahoma NBA team, right?
Yeah. Yeah, my son's a big Oklahoma City Thunder fan.
Okay, well, you're an NBA fan. I used to love the NBA, and I still do to this day. And now I've come up, now I'm with the bandwagon fan. I followed them in the late 80s. When they lost to Detroit, I was a big Chicago Michael Jordan fan.
Yeah.
I'm a Bulls fan. And they spoiled me going through those. And I love the NBA, and I'm still a Bulls fan to this day. But I haven't watched the NBA in 3 years. And I refuse to watch till LeBron James retires. When
Why?
he leaves, I'm coming back.
You don't like LeBron?
I can't stand him.
Well,
I don't like LeBron. I love the way he plays, but he's just on his politics. He's just killed it for me.
Yeah, I'm able
the
to.
Way the NBA. Yeah,
I'm able to separate from all that. I can admire, because I suspect that if I were to sit down with a bunch of people in sports, that I would disagree with a lot of their politics and they would disagree with mine. But I love the NBA. I love it. And LeBron, what LeBron James is doing in his late 30s is absolutely remarkable.
He's unbelievable.
And so I just
he is.
Here's the thing, right?
He is a great player, Neal. He is one of the greatest, if not the greatest. But I think Jordan's the best. And then I think it's between him and Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, I generally in the modern era. But here's my point, though, right? I don't do that with music. I don't do that with. I don't listen to a musician and go, okay, well, I don't know what his or her politics are, and if I disagree with it, I still like their music. Like, there's.
I've never done that, Neal. I've never done that in my life.
But there's no difference really, because
3 years ago it just got me.
Yeah, at the end of the day, LeBron's an entertainer, and so what he views, like I run a lot, or when my knee lets me. Here lately, my knee hasn't let me, which is very frustrating. But regardless, when I run a lot, I listen to a lot of rap. Yeah. I listen to a lot of Eminem, for example. I suspect that Eminem and I don't see the world the exact same way. It doesn't matter. I enjoy his music, and when I'm running, I like it. I mean, I listen when I'm just kind of hanging around the house, and sometimes when I need to kind of mellow a little bit, I want to wind down. I'll turn on some Coldplay. I like them. I know that people are going to take my man card away, but I don't know what Chris Martin's politics are, and I'm probably very different from mine. But I still like his music. I like their music, so I don't view sports that way. And I know coaches who are conservative. I know coaches who are liberal. I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't think it matters.
Hey, Neal, let me put it like this. Maybe I put it wrong. I said it's politics. But 3 years ago, when all this stuff was going on there in the country, and just the way he did come out against Cops. And maybe maybe I was too harsh on him. But I mean, I love the way he plays. I really do.
Yeah,
I respect his game.
I would encourage you to watch the NBA right now, and I'll let you.
Well, I got a friend that watches the NBA. He says I'm missing a lot.
There've never been this many great young players. It's really fun. It's a really fun league. It's there's so many good teams. Like in the West,
I thought about coming back watching it this year.
Yeah,
I want to see some of them.
This kid with the Spurs, Victor Wembanyama, is just going to be special. Chet Holmgren, the rookie for the Thunder, I think he's going to be special. I mean, he's Nikola Jokic playing for the Denver Nuggets right now. I think might very well end up being the best center in the history of the game. He is that good, and Denver's beautiful
I
to
need
watch
to come back and watch.
Yeah,
I heard there's a man in Denver and there's one in Dallas. I really need to watch.
Luka Doncic is a lot of fun. Giannis Antetokounmpo is an absolute freak of an athlete who is also a very gifted basketball player. It's a really fun league, and there's a handful of teams that are really fun to watch, and there are some really good young teams that are kind of on their way up that you can follow and that are fun to watch that play it that are going to win championships down the road, and it's a fun league, man. So I would encourage you to just give it a shot. Hey, I'm gonna let you go, Rodney. Thanks for the call.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Neal.
Let me get to a couple of these questions. Do I think there's a difference between 9-3 and 10-2 in terms of effect on recruiting? No, I do not. I don't think there's any impact at all. I think both of those are. Ole Miss has established itself right now as one of the more consistent programs in the league, and Lane Kiffin has proven to know how to work the transfer portal, and they're recruiting at a higher level with high school kids. It's a program with momentum. A third loss wouldn't change that. I don't know that you. I don't think you. On the flip side, I don't think you'd recruit better at 10-2 than you would necessarily at 9-3. I don't. The kids just don't think like that, and they really don't. Maybe they should, but they don't. Let's see. Seeing if I missed anything in the stream. Yeah, Wemby grind. Wemby's a stud. By the way, Grind made a really good point. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. This is in the thread. This is something to watch for. He says, in 2 of A&M's losses, Miami had a wide receiver go 6 catches for 126, and then Burton, who plays for Alabama, had 9 for 197. So the question is, can Ole Miss have a guy put up those numbers? He mentions Trey Harris. I do think Ole Miss wide receivers have to have good days. He says Miami also had another guy go 5 catches for 94 yards, and Alabama had Bond, another wide receiver, put up 7 for 96. He says the Tennessee loss followed a different script. Yeah, I don't know that Ole Miss has to put up the big Burton Miami numbers, but I do think they have to have success. I think they have to be balanced. They have to be balanced. They have to be able to do both. And if they do, I love their chances. A&M's really good at getting you into 3rd and long, though, and you want to try to avoid that. But that's pretty par for the course all the time. Let's see. Low question thread. Hattiesburg Reb says, pick 2 of the following for the Cubs to have on the roster next season: Cody Bellinger, Juan Soto, Aaron Nola, Pete Alonso, Yamamoto, the Japanese pitcher that everyone's raving about, or Tyler Glasnow. I can have 2 of those guys. Oh God, give me Bellinger and Soto, I think, or even Alonso and Soto. I want Soto. If I can have Soto, I want Soto. Period. And then after that, Alonso's on the final year of a deal. It'll give you a lot of power. Bellinger is less power, more contact, more position flexibility. Some of that I'd have to know. I'd have to know internally what the Cubs really think about Pete Crow Armstrong. How close to ready do they think he is? Because he wasn't ready in September when he came up. So that would be something I'd love to know. I'd love to be inside the meetings and find out what they thought about him, what they think about Alexander Canario, a couple of the other young positional outfielders that are coming up. This feels like the offseason that you trade. This feels like the offseason that you make that move for I would make the move for either Alonso or Soto. I would get Soto if I could. I would pay damn near anything for Soto. I would sign him to a long-term deal, and then I think I'd give Bellinger the contract because I think Bellinger's can play center field. Bellinger can play first base. Bellinger obviously could play the corners. You get a lot of flexibility with him. Borek says, how blanking tired are you of talking about 11-1? Only 2 or 9 more days. It's not that I'm tired of it. I hear people talking about it like it's a likelihood, and it's not. It's not likely. Doesn't mean that it won't happen. I don't think – I hate that. It's crazy that I'm the one doing this. I don't think it's fair that people are starting to move the goalpost a little bit or a lot bit. Before the season, 9-3 would have been celebrated by the overwhelming majority of the fan base. And now for people to go, well, 9-3 would be a disappointment. In the moment, maybe, but not in the big picture. And 10-2 before the season, I thought 10-2 was the absolute ceiling. And if you hit your ceiling, you did something. I mean, there's a lot. Do you know how many programs out there in Power 5 would kill for a 10-win season? And you got a chance to have 2 of them in 3 years? It's huge. But the 11-1 talk is just, it's not that I don't give Ole Miss any chance next week. It's just Georgia's really good. Georgia's historically good. What they're doing with their program is damn. I mean, he's 41-1 in their last 42, 25 in a row, 2 national titles, damn good shot at a third in the SEC at the same time that Alabama's been at the peak, at the pinnacle. That's strong. That's really strong. The second question was, how did you answer the question, what did you want to be when you grow up at the age of 10? I would have said I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. But starting in about the 6th grade, I knew I liked to write. I was in a class that was like a creative writing class, and I wrote a book about a monster that became president, and all the kids wanted to hear it, each chapter. And I can remember really liking to write at an early age. I knew that I wanted to write. So I've kind of known that all of my life. Writing's kind of my, especially when I can really focus on it, it's kind of my, I enjoy it. I get into a zone. I hear athletes talk about that. Not really anymore, not with the stuff we do at Rivals, but I wrote some stuff in Mobile that was a lot of digging and a lot of work, and there was a lot of writing, and it was long form, and I enjoyed it. Would I rather swim in a pool of mayonnaise or find out a girl is my half sister after dating her for 2 years? It's ridiculous. I mean, I'd rather swim in the mayonnaise at that point, but what does she look like? I'm kidding. Salad Thunder, keep hearing comments that Dart doesn't look right. His injury is why he hasn't played 100%. I agree. He says, then why didn't they throw Spencer out there, Spence Sanders against Vanderbilt? Because it's Jackson Dart's team. It's his team. The kids play for him. They want him to play. He's the leader. Sometimes quarterbacks have to play hurt, and Jackson's playing hurt. But he's the leader. It's his team. He's earned the right to play in these games. He's earned the right to play these games. Bottom line. He didn't finish the season great last year. The team didn't finish the season great last year. They brought in other quarterbacks. He could have quit, could have gone to a different place. He didn't. He stayed. He took on a leadership role, played David Eckert has a story in the Clarion Ledger today about the trip. They took a bunch of his receivers out to California to work with his quarterback trainer. It's his team, and that's why. He's healthy enough to play. He wants to play, and he's tough. Austin, thanks for the super chat. Why not we have calls on the post game show anymore? A lot of it's been late games. A lot of the call in shows last year were kind of drunk. I wasn't on them. Chase was doing it by himself. I don't think it's something he wanted to do. It just we needed to turn we need to turn the post game show into audio form pretty quick, and so you can't do that while you're still live on a stream. So that was a lot of it. It just makes sense. We've talked about taking calls, but like when a 6:30 game last week, we're not finished till midnight. Take calls for another hour. It's just so late, and neither one of us are late night people at all. I mean, I'm more of one than he is, and that should tell you something. Just it's in some ways it just doesn't make sense. In some ways it does. I get it, but in some ways it doesn't. Ole Miss 3792 asked me about the Gotti Netflix documentary. I've not seen it. I really don't know a whole lot about him. I never really watched a lot of the mob stuff as much as other people. Who was more famous in their day, him or Taylor Swift? It's hard for me to imagine anybody being more famous than Taylor Swift is. I mean, she's international. JFish T288 says, I find many aspects of the Tyler Dabo exchange and the ensuing discussion fascinating. Chief among them is the relationship between the coach and fans, donors. Dabo points out that he works for the board of trustees. The president and the AD, I'm not sure that's true, but what are his obligations or responsibilities to the people that actually fund his program? As these coaching salaries and NIL demands skyrocket, what do you think are the roles of fans and donors? I mean, they're asking you guys to pay the players. They're asking you to pay the salaries. That's what they're asking of you. It's fascinating, but that's what they're asking you. They're asking you to buy tickets. They're asking you to support the program, to help with capital improvements, and then they're asking you to help pay the players. That's a big ask. And it's fans, I think, feel more ownership because at that point you do essentially have a degree of ownership. Like if I go to a Cubs game, I know I bought a ticket, so I paid for my admission, but I don't look out at the second baseman and go, I helped buy him. I think the TV deal helped buy him. I know that the money they make out of the stadium helps pay for players, but I don't think about it that way. When you contribute $2,000 to the Grove Collective, you're buying players. That's what you're doing. And I do think that changes the relationship. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and he says, are the customers paying to consume a product, and if they don't like the product, they should go buy a different one, or are they shareholders who have invested their monies with that expectation for a return on that investment, and they have the right to hold the people charged with leading their programs accountable for their failings? Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, ultimately fans make decisions. If you don't go to the games and you don't contribute to the collectives, you're sending a message, and the message is received. They have to, and the people in charge have to make decisions. Landon says, if I were suddenly the czar of a blue blood flagship university and could handpick the next football coach without concern of fan base reaction or money restrictions, who are my first three calls? How far down the list is Kiffin? I would call Dan Lanning first. Be my first call. I'd beg him. I'd call Kirby Smart because he gets it. This will probably surprise you. I think Steve Sarkisian would be really high on my list. Kiffin would be pretty high on my list as well. Maybe as high as 4. I'd kick the tires on Urban Meyer. I'd dig a little, but he wins everywhere he goes. If I didn't have to worry about reaction and I didn't have to worry about money, I would owe it to myself to inquire about him. 83 Win says, was the robbery of Deion Sanders' Colorado football team at the Coliseum. A grab and go typical of LA. B, a PR stunt by Sanders to attract an infusion of money. C, justified because of all the high dollar bling his kids have been flaunting. Or D, a symptom of a deeper societal problem in today's culture. Or E, none of the above. I would say D is my answer. I don't think it was a PR stunt. It certainly wasn't justified. I did not watch the gubernatorial debate. RC Reb 22. I was pretty busy last night taping interviews, loading podcast. I did the show with Pete, so I couldn't have audio on anything. I had a couple of games on in the background. I watched Pelicans and Thunder, and I watched the World Series game, but I didn't have any audio, so I couldn't listen to a debate. And Kyle says, when was the last time you cooked some ribs, and how were they? It's been a long time since I did ribs. They were pretty good, if I recall correctly, but it's been more than a minute since I've done that. Let's see if there's anything in the stream before start winding down here on the show. Appreciate everybody for being in it. Yeah, Connor says, do I know what Jeffrey's thoughts are on the Grizzlies? We talked about it a little bit on the podcast this morning. You can hear him. I think Jeffrey is beginning to have some concerns about the Grizzlies. He's worried about the depth of their roster, and I think he's concerned about the impact of Steven Adams' absence for the season. They're just not rebounding the ball well. And the West is loaded, man. The West is really good. You got the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Warriors, the Suns. I thought the Pelicans looked good last night. The Mavericks have looked really good so far. You got two elite scorers, and right now Luka's playing at a super high level. That's before you even talk about the Clippers. It's before you even talk about the Thunder, the Sacramento Kings. The West is loaded. You can get lost in the West fast. Even a team like Memphis, you can get lost fast in the West. And so it's too early to panic and too early to go, oh yeah, they suck or any of that stuff. But they gotta start getting some wins here soon, because the West is a beast, just a beast. There's even the teams that everybody thought would be bad, like San Antonio, is not bad right now. They've got Popovich as a coach, and this Wembanyama, he's the deal. He's special. He raises all boats. He's really good. He's going to have some days where he's going to look like a rookie, and he's going to have some days probably when they play Denver, for example, where the Joker's going to do to Wemby what he did to Chet the other night in Oklahoma City. But those cats are coming. Those two guys are going to be stars. The league is fun. If you don't like the NBA, I get it, whatever. But if it's because you haven't tried it in a while, you might want to turn it on. There's some really fun teams. And I think basketball's about to get bigger here, because Chris Beard, today we talked to him for a little bit. They opened the season on Monday against Alabama State. And we talked to him, and obviously he was very, very close with Bobby Knight, who passed away yesterday at the age of 83. And Chris was pretty emotional about it, but he spent 8 years, day in, day out with Bobby Knight, and remains very close to the Knight family to this day. And Chris Beard is an impressive guy. He was super impressive today. I will try to get that story turned around as soon as I can. I don't have any shows to do tomorrow, so I will do some writing tomorrow, certainly. Let's see if there's anything else before I start closing it up. I don't think so. I think we'll wrap it there. Give me a chance to get all this done. So yeah, Tupelo Reb says, I think what we've tried to do with that show, the post-game show, I'll go back to that because I get the question a lot. I think what we've really tried to do is make that show a football show where we talk about the game as much as we can, where we talk about the other games as much as we can. People got irritated with a caller would call in and it was about something other than that. And when they listened in podcast form, they didn't like it. So we were trying to make as many people happy as we could. All right, last thing, Grind. Thanks for super chat, my man. I appreciate you. He says, is Tom Herman or Rhett Lashley good enough to fire Pittman and Arnett for? Is SMU a better job than Mississippi State with NIL and going to the ACC? The second part of your question is yes. Yes, SMU is a better job with NIL and going to the ACC. State might be able to pay more money to a coach right now, and the money might be such that you have to take it. I mean, if someone offers you $7 million a year on a 4-year deal, I mean, do the math. It's basically all guaranteed. $28 million is a lot of money. I mean, that is generational money that you would have to really think hard about turning that down. But Mississippi State's a really hard job. It's a really hard job. It's. I don't say this just because I cover Ole Miss. I really don't. That job's the 15th best job in the league come July the 1st of 2024, when Texas and Oklahoma join this league. Only Vanderbilt's a harder job. You can argue South Carolina's in that mix. I disagree. I think South Carolina's a better job. I think if I offered the South Carolina job and the Mississippi State job to 100 coaches, more than 70 would take South Carolina. The same with Kentucky. Missouri's got much more favorable NIL positioning right now than Mississippi State. And at Mississippi State right now, you deal with Lane Kiffin up the road. Lane Kiffin has Ole Miss as a very relevant national brand. And you're 82 miles or whatever it is from Tuscaloosa. That's brutal. I mean, you can argue that job sucks. It's a hard job. Tom Herman, I don't know enough about him, like his whole deal. I know they've had some success at FAU. Lashley's a good coach. Does either one of those guys move the needle at Arkansas more than Sam Pittman? I mean, maybe. But look, I said this earlier about Arkansas. Arkansas's got a decision to make in football. They've got to decide, does it really matter? Not does it matter. It matters. They want to be good. They've got a beautiful stadium. It's a beautiful part of the country. A lot of money up there. It's growing. I used to laugh when people said it's the next Austin, and now I'm not so sure I laugh anymore. They got a lot happening up there with Fortune 500 companies and lots of jobs and people, and it's booming. But does it matter enough to start pouring that money into NIL to get players to Fayetteville? That's a question that I don't know the answer to. It's not my world. I don't cover that beat. I don't know. But that's a decision they have to make. That job, I think, has more upside than Mississippi State. But if they're going to compete with the top of the SEC, with Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee and LSU and Texas and OU and Texas A&M and Ole Miss, the way that Ole Miss is invested in football right now, they'll have to step it up. And I don't know how that works. I don't know what the dynamics of that are with that fan base. I just don't know. And I don't know whether you can actualize the money that's up there. And there's undoubtedly tons of money up in that entire corridor because of the Walmart Tyson stuff. Can you turn that money into NIL money for the University of Arkansas program? I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. I mean, the Waltons in part own the Broncos. I mean, they there's the money to make a monumental change, but what does it look like from a public relations standpoint if you pour tons of corporate money into one football program? When you have a company that it's based it's based up there, but you're trying to sell to clients worldwide. Does that hurt you? I don't know. What I think Rhett would leave SMU. I just don't know. I don't know Rhett Lashley. I don't know about him. I don't know enough about him personally to know like what his desires are, what his financial situation is, what his dreams are, that kind of thing. Yeah. So your last question here is what I advise him not to. I think I would advise him to hold tight. I would advise him certainly not to take the Mississippi State job. I think that's until they fix. Here's where they're different than Arkansas, right? You mentioned those two schools for those two jobs. you can at least envision a scenario where Arkansas is an NIL power. The money's there. The corporate's actualizing it's a different thing, but it's actually there. It's right there in town. You could go. You can paint a realistic picture of them becoming a power in this era of college football where NIL pays players. I don't think you can ever paint that picture at Mississippi State. That's a problem. So I would advise him not to take the state job, and I would advise him caution on the Arkansas job. So anyway, we got a lot of program coming your way. I'll stop there because we got program coming. The Butcher versus the Dance instructor, Greg Jones, Caroline McCready, will come to you at 6, I think is when I scheduled that. Let me make sure. I need to look. Yeah, 6 o'clock. That's coming to you at 6 o'clock. That's brought to you by LB's Meat Market, 2008 University Avenue in Oxford. Then Pete's Pigskin Preview comes on at 6:45. That's brought to you by Riverland Roofing. Pete shows almost an hour. And then at 7:45, I've got an almost 2-hour show for you. The OEP Extra, previewing Texas A&M at Ole Miss. I talked to David Eckert of the Clarion Ledger. Talked to Olin Buchanan, my friend from Texags, who's great. David Nuno, also of Texags, also just a tremendous journalist. He's great to visit with. And then Ben Mintz, our weekly visit with Ben. We talk Ole Miss, Texas A&M. We talk some SEC, and then of course we talk the weekend ahead in the National Football League. So there's a lot of that coming your way. So enjoy the show. I need LSU to win. It's a big game for me and Tyler and our picks before I get sent off to someplace in Montana and have to figure out my way home. So that's the reason I'm holding my grandfather's LSU ball. I need the Tigers to win. So anyway, have a great weekend, everybody. Really appreciate all the people in the stream. Really appreciate all the feedback, all the questions. Thanks to Todd Abernethy for his time on the show today. And we'll have a post-game show on Saturday after Texas A&M and Ole Miss. And then, of course, we'll be back with a full week of podcast next week here on MPW Digital, coverage at rebelgrove.com as well. So until next time, take care.